The blues. Okay, the name of this section is the mighty tritone, or the blues connection. The blues is one of the cornerstones of all modern music, from 1900 all the way up to the present. Blues is a big, huge influence on all of music. Bluegrass, jazz, rock, everything. In its basic form, the blues is a 12-bar form. It's divided into 3 4-bar sections. The first 4-bar section is has the 1 chord, or the key, the chord of the key that you're in. So if we're in the key of C, the chord would be C, and all the blues chords are 7th chords, dominant 7th chords. So the 1 chord in the key of C would be C7. And usually there's a phrase, for instance, you ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. That's the first phrase, the first 4-bar phrase. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. Then that phrase repeats on the 4 chord, which in C, if C is 1, 4 is F, algebra. If C equals 1, X, anyway, 4 chord in the key of C is F, so F7 is the 4 chord. And that phrase repeats on the 4 chord. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. Goes back to the 1 chord. Then the third 4-bar phrase goes to the 5 chord, which in C would be G, and goes to the 4 chord, and then the 1 chord and the 5 chord. So it would go, and the phrase, the words of the phrase would tie it all together, like you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. And then the 5 chord, which brings it back to 1. So you have the 1 chord, 4 chord, the 1 chord. 5, 4, 1, 5. Okay. So what's this tritone thing? The tritone is an interval. An interval is the space between 2 notes. The great guitarist George Van Eps, again, huge influence on me. George Van Eps used to call intervals air gaps. The tritone air gap is actually an augmented 4th interval, which another word for an augmented 4th interval is a diminished 5th interval. And it's if you take 1, 2, 3, 4 of the scale, sharp 4 of the scale, so between 1 and sharp 4, that's a tritone. It sounds kind of ugly in its raw state like that. But that interval has a lot of power. It has so much power that it is the driving harmonic force of the blues. And that tritone happens to exist between the 3rd and the flatted 7th of the chord that you're talking about. If you're talking about a C7th chord, the 3rd of C7 is E, C, D, E. That's the 3rd. If you keep going up the C scale, you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B is 7. B flat is flat 7. So between 3 and flat 7, there's the tritone. All right? Now, there's a lot of interesting sonic physics going on here, but the thing that is most interesting and applicable to what we're talking about, blues, is that if you play a C7th chord and release your index finger, now you have C in the bass and you have the tritone here, E and B flat. And that's all you need to define C7, or the 1 chord in the blues. In fact, really, all you need is the tritone. Because if it's a group playing, the bass player can play C, which is the root. But if you think of this for momentarily as being the bass instrument, so you have the bass note, the root, and the tritone. Now the next thing you're going to do is go to the 4 chord, F7. Well, here's what's very interesting. The tritone of the 4 chord is a half step below the tritone of the 1 chord. Boom, there it is. There's the 4 chord. here's the root of the 4 chord. So now you have root, tritone of the 4 chord, root, tritone of the 1 chord. Okay, 1, 4, 1. The tritone of the 5 chord is a half step above the tritone of the 1 chord. So here's 1 again, there's 5. There's the root, G. Right? So if you just work in tritones, you have 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. And you have a whole blues right there in this little compact area. And you have to use, really, the best thing to do is use your middle finger on the 4th string and your pinky on the 3rd string, and use that as one entity and slide it around. 1, 4, 5, 1. And use your 3rd finger for the root when it's on the 5th string, as in C7. And use your 1st finger for the root when it's on the 6th string, as in F7 or G7. With this information, you can play the blues in any key. If you want to play the blues in D, move the C7 up to D7. Now you have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 1 chord, the 5 chord, the 1 chord. There it is, D, blues in D. Blues in E flat. Boom, right there. Okay, so really, that's a really easy and